Hey, what's up? Faizan here from ResearchBeast. On this channel, I share different tips and tricks for researchers, different motivational talks, and I also talk to experts about the research methods or anything related to research. So if you're interested in content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. In today's video, I'll be talking about how do you deal with the criticism or harsh comments that you get on your work from your supervisors or advisors. So as you know that it's a very common thing. Many postgraduate students are suffering from a dilemma, and that is I've spent so much time on my work, I've spent so much time on writing my thesis or proposal or dissertation or whatever. Yet when I send it to my supervisor gets back to me with a very critical look at my paper or a lot of harsh comments. So how do I deal with it? Because it's so demotivating and it's so discouraging. So, first, it's very important for us to realize, especially for you, to realize that you are a postgraduate student. You are a student who is studying a research-based degree, and all this criticism that you get on your work is basically to train you. Because remember, as soon as you are done with your degree, everybody around you would expect you to be a professional academic, but most importantly, professional researcher, a standalone researcher who can do independent research. So remember and realize that any type of harsh comments that you get from your supervisors or advisors are basically to train you. That's the first thing you need to do. Once you realize this, then it's easier to deal with something like that. So moving forward, remember, as soon as you are done with your degree, and even nowadays because of so much competition, during your degrees you are expected to write research papers. And most of the journals, or the expectation is to publish your work in refereed journals where your work is going through scrutiny or through peer review, where most of the times your paper would go through critical reviewers. So remember, in my experience, I've never seen people getting acceptance of their paper, especially if you're targeting good journals, acceptance of your papers without any sort of review. Most of the times you are going to get reviews. And those reviews are oftentimes very critical because reviewers do not know who the authors are and they want to make the best version of the paper that you are submitting. So if you are used to getting harsh comments or critical, not really much harsh, but really critical comments from your advisors and your supervisors, that would train you on how do you deal with those critical comments from the reviewers when you get them in the future, right? So in my opinion, you can only do that. You can only defend your work or provide a justification for your work if you have done a good job during your PhD studies. And we all know there's a famous saying which is practice makes a man perfect. So how would you get perfect at something if you are not gone through it? So all the comments that you get from your supervisors, even when you are in your PhDs, treat the comments from your supervisor as if you are getting comments from reviewers. And if your supervisor is giving you comments, make sure when you reply back, respond to the comments by your supervisor, comment by comment, which is going to help you in the future a lot. Because most of the journals would require you to do something like that in the future. Now, obviously, this is the bright side of it, but I understand that there are cases where that's not what's happening. There are cases where students unfortunately go through unnecessary harsh criticism from their supervisors. And if that's the case, I'll give you some suggestions on how can you cope with something like that. Hey guys, if you think you are getting some value out of this video, please do not forget to hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel. I would also appreciate if you can share this video within your social networks or within your networks of people that may need this video. Going back to the video. Number one, do not wait to complete a lot of stuff before you send it to your supervisor. So make sure you are making some progress, even if it's a little progress, but make consistent progress on your work and then send the draft to your supervisor. It's much easier for your supervisor to read like 2 pages and give you comments compared to reading like 25 pages and giving you comments, because most of the times your supervisors are also really busy. They are also busy with their work, with their life, personal life and research and service and a lot of other commitments. So the more you pressurize your supervisor, even you don't intend to, but if you are sending a huge draft to your supervisor, it's sort of a pressure on your supervisor. Many times it ends up with harsh comments or really critical comments. So my suggestion is, instead of waiting to finish like chapter 1 or chapter 2 of your thesis or dissertation and then sending it to your advisors or supervisors, send one section of a chapter, and that's much easier for your supervisor to read and provide you constructive feedback on it. So that's number one. Now, what would happen with this particular suggestion that I gave you is that let's say you finished 3 pages for your chapter 1, you send it to your supervisor, you fixed it, and now you are sending your supervisor the next section of chapter 1, including the previous section. So by the end, when you are sending the complete chapter 1 to your supervisor, pretty much all the chapter would have gone through review or re-review of your supervisor multiple times, and it would have very less mistakes by the time that chapter finishes. So obviously at the end of the day it would be beneficial for you, because you don't have to do many changes once the entire chapter is finished. So that has worked for me, that has worked for students that I work with. I'm pretty sure it can work with you as well. It just needs a little practice, but remember here, consistency is the key. Even if you're doing a little bit, make sure it's consistent. You're consistently sending it to your supervisor. Set up a date with your supervisor. Send it, let's say, every 2 weeks, or every week send your progress to your supervisor. One thing which is very important here for all of us to understand, that when you as a student are working with your supervisor, for you the relation becomes one-to-one, because you are one student and you have one supervisor and you are working with that supervisor. But for your supervisor it becomes difficult, because your supervisor normally is working with multiple students. So from your supervisor's perspective, it's one-to-many. And that's why sometimes miscommunications can happen. So the more consistent you are with your supervisor, the better it becomes for you to at the end of the day. It's possible that you are doing all this and you're consistently sending your work to your supervisor, yet your supervisor is still being very critical of your work. And if that happens, that's completely fine, because what you need to do there is you need to take it as an academic challenge. Do your best to justify your work and then send it to your supervisor. Try to engage in a dialogue with respect with your supervisor. So meet your supervisor, and if you think that there is something that your supervisor is saying and it's not possible, engage in dialogue, but take some references, take some support to your arguments. Again, remember, you should do this with respect. And since it's an academic discussion, most of the times your supervisors would accept your argument if you have some sort of a backing to your argument. So that's very important, and it works most of the times. Let's say you are at a stage where your supervisor has given you a lot of criticism. So first of all, what you need to do is, if it's a document where there's track changes and comments used within the document, make sure you pull them out into a separate document, put them into one table. And right now on the screen you would see how I normally do with it, even though I don't have a supervisor right now. But this is how I deal with the reviewer comments when I get reviewer comments from a paper that is under review with a journal. What I do is I put all the comments on one side of a table, and then I respond to each comment on the other side of the table with proper references, with proper logic and justification. I think you can do this with your supervisor. And it would be very helpful if you are going to meet your supervisor, and if you are going to get into a discussion, an academic discussion with your supervisor, trying to prove your point or trying to explain to your supervisor why you have done a thing in a certain way. That type of table can really help you, because it's documented, it's right in front of you. Let's say you wake up in the morning, you received your email from your supervisor with a lot of comments. So yes, put it into a table. Rank them in terms of either ease or importance. So once you put it in a table, then rank them in terms of importance or ease. What do I mean by importance? So you are the author of your thesis or dissertation. You know which comments are the most important, and you can guess it from the comments by your supervisor. So your supervisor will also emphasize on things that are very important. Put them first in the table so you can deal with them first. So if you have to meet your supervisor and if you haven't done all the comments, at least you would have dealt with the most important ones as per your supervisor. So rank the comments in terms of importance or ease. Ease is where you can do most of the comments, and then that way you would have covered most of the comments from your supervisor. Another mistake that many people make is, even though when they are dealing with the comments of the supervisors or even reviewers, focusing too much on the consistency of the language or grammatical mistakes. Now, I don't think it's a good idea because it exhausts you as an author. So I think what you need to do is deal with the technical things first, with the things that are specific to your discipline, those things first, and then move on to English. So because many authors may not be English speaking background, so maybe that's not your expertise, and you can easily hire an English copy editor or proofreader to deal with those things. So in my opinion, what you need to do is deal first with the things that are more important and leave the language accuracy and copy editing towards the end. You can always deal with them. That's one reason. The other reason why you should do this is because you don't know when you are dealing with the comments if your supervisor or your reviewers would be completely okay with the changes that you have made, right? So obviously you will be changing the stuff, the content of your paper or thesis or dissertation till the end. So what's the point if you are changing it and you are dealing with the language first? So keep the language editing towards the end. Once you have the entire draft finalized, then you can deal with the language, and it would save time, as well as you would be emotionally very stable instead of getting criticism on the language from your supervisor consistently. So that's another tip that can help a lot. Now, in the end, I would just say that all these suggestions that I have given you, or the insights, are based on my own experience as an author, as a supervisor. Maybe some of you might have a different experience, and if that's the case, please comment below. Tell me, how do you deal with the harsh criticism from the supervisors or reviewers? Or if you are a supervisor, how do you suggest your students to deal with the harsh criticism or really criticism on the papers or write-up? And we can get a discussion going in the comment section below. With that, thank you very much, and I hope the best to all of you. Good luck.